Kolmanskop is a ghost town in southern Namibia, a few kilometers inland from the port of Luderitz. In 1908, Luederitz was plunged into diamond fever and people rushed into the Namib desert hoping to make an easy fortune. Within 2 years, a town, complete with a casino, school, hospital and exclusive residential buildings, was established in the barren sandy desert. But shortly after the drop in diamond sales after the First World War, the beginning of the end started. During the 1950s the town was deserted and the dunes began to reclaim what was always theirs. A couple of old buildings are still standing and some interiors like the theater is still in very good condition, but the rest are crumbling ruins demolished from grandeur to ghost houses. Pripyat is an abandoned city in the zone of alienation in northern Ukraine. It was home to the Chernobyl nuclear power plant workers, abandoned in 1986 following the Chernobyl disaster. Its population had been around 50,000 prior to the accident. Until recently, the site was practically a museum, documenting the late Soviet era. Apartment buildings, 4 of which were recent constructions not yet occupied, swimming pools, hospitals and other buildings were all abandoned, and everything inside the buildings was left behind, including records, papers, TVs, children's toys, furniture, valuables, and clothing, etc. that any normal family would have with them. Residents were only allowed to take away a suitcase full of documents, books and clothes that were not contaminated. However, many of the apartment buildings were almost completely looted sometime around the beginning of the 21st century. In the north of Taiwan, this futuristic pod village was initially built as a luxury vacation retreat for the rich. However, after numerous fatal accidents during construction, production was halted. A combination of lack of money and lack of willingness meant that work was stopped permanently, and the alien-like structures remain as if in remembrance of those lost. Indeed, rumors in the surrounding area suggest that the city is now haunted by the ghosts of those who died. After this, the whole thing received the cover-up treatment. And the government, who commissioned the site in the first place, was keen to distance itself from the bizarre happenings. Thanks to this, there are no named architects. The project may never be restarted thanks to the growing legend, and there would be no value in redeveloping the area for other purpose. Krakow is located in the region of Basilicata and the province of Matera, about 25 miles inland from the Gulf of Taranto at the instep of the boot of Italy. This medieval town is typical of those in the area, built up with long undulating hills all around that allow for the farming of wheat and other crops. Krakow can be dated back to 1060 when the land was in the ownership of Archbishop Arnoldo, Bishop of Tricaraco. This long-standing relationship with the church had much influence over the inhabitants throughout the ages. In 1891, the population of Krakow stood at well over 2,000 people. Though there had been many problems, with poor agricultural conditions creating desperate times. Between 1892 and 1922 over 1,300 people moved from the town to North America. Poor farming was added to by earthquakes, landslides, and war, all of which contributed to this mass migration. Between 1959 and 1972 Krakow was plagued by these landslides and quakes. In 1963 the remaining 1,800 inhabitants were transferred to a nearby valley called Krakow Pescara, and the original Krakow remains in a state of crumbling decay to this day. The small village of Oradour-sur-Glane, France, is the setting of unspeakable horror. During World War II, 642 residents were massacred by German soldiers as punishment for the French resistance. The Germans had initially intended to target nearby Oradour-sur-Vaires and mistakenly invaded Oradour-sur-Glane on June 10, 1944. According to a survivor's account, the men were herded into barns where they were shot in the legs so they would die more slowly. The women and children, who had been held in a church, all perished when their attempt to escape was met by machine gun fire. The village was razed by the Germans afterward. Its ruins still stand today as a memorial to the dead and a reminder of the events that took place.